Joining us now, candidate for State Senate, District 12 Republican, Vince Haley. Hey, Vince, good to have you with us. Happy Easter.
Happy Easter. Thanks for having me on, John.
Now, look, Vince, this is one of the most competitive primary races in Virginia. Your primary June 9th. You're competing with three other candidates for the to be the nominee of the Republicans for District 12. Former Delegate Bill Janus, Dr. Sovan Donovan, and businessman Eddie Whitlock in the area. So there's four candidates in. What's a little bit different, Vince, about your campaign, well, we asked you to come on today, is you've got one big idea, and that big idea is you're advocating eventual elimination of the Virginia income tax. Can you share with our audience how that would work?
Sure. Well, the big idea is not an idea that somehow, in the basement I sort of dreamed up. It's an idea that 9 other states in the country have already executed on, and that is to have state government financed not by income taxes, but by other taxes, mostly sales taxes. And I think those 9 states, is a very considerable body of evidence that those 9 states do much better than the other states. They grow faster, they have more jobs, they have greater take-home pay, and guess what? People move there because they go from high-tax states to low-tax states. And just to share with your listeners, I'll just run down a list. Florida, Texas, Tennessee, Nevada, South Dakota, Alaska, Washington, New Hampshire, Wyoming. Almost 20% of the states in this country have no state income tax, and they do better. And so the big idea is that Virginia should learn from this experience, from the laboratory of the states, that, hey, I don't think there's any doubt here that these states do better, and the only question for me is, how do we move in that direction so that we can enjoy the fruits of a better economy? And I would hasten to add that, North Carolina, our neighbor to the south, is also moving in this direction. They've established legislation to sort of move in the direction of lower income tax rates with an eventual goal of 0, as has Kansas, and Maine is looking at it right now. So this idea is for Virginia to have a bigger economy, more jobs, greater take-home pay. That's the idea.
Let me ask you this, though. The amount of revenue coming into Virginia from the income tax, do you know how much it is?
Oh, yeah. It's roughly 60% right now of the funding of the budget of the Commonwealth. It's
a huge number. So if you wipe that out, you wouldn't be able to fund public schools. You wouldn't be able to fund fire. You wouldn't be able to
No. That is not the case. Now, look, this is not a magic pill. Make clear to your listeners. This is not something where you press a button, a red button like Hillary Clinton, and everything changes. No, this is a phase out over time. This requires a study focus. North Carolina didn't press a button and all of a sudden it changed. What is required is what we have in the Republican Creed, the third point of the Republican Creed: budget restraint. You don't have to cut anything. What you do is you restrain the budget. You restrain the budget growth. And so every year, if you can restrain the budget, you're going to generate a surplus. Has anybody heard about rainy day funds? Well, we have rainy day funds. That's a surplus, right? So we restrain the budget, and I propose that we take those surpluses and we use it to ratchet down income tax rates until we get to 0. And here's the thing about it. When you do that and you lower income tax rates, you're going to generate more economic growth, and more people will come here. And the more economic growth you generate, the sales tax, people buying things, you're going to have a bigger sales tax revenue. Now, over time, and I think we can do this in 7-8 years, if not sooner, over time you're going to be able to lower that rate down to 0. You don't have to cut anything. This is the experience of the 9 other states. You don't have to cut anything. In fact, with other states, because they have better economies, they have, in many cases, better services of the state, if you want to focus on that. So the idea is actually have a bigger economy. A bigger economy, more growth. More growth solves almost every state challenge. Every challenge the state has is made better when you have a larger economy and more revenues coming in.
Stosh did it the right way. That's why we're even having this dialogue with Vince Haley and others. Now, so what you're saying basically is take the rainy day fund, rein in spending, take that money, lower the state income tax gradually. As you lower the income tax, if I'm understanding what you're saying, if I'm getting a little bigger check because I'm not getting as much income tax, so I get a little more disposable income, then I'm going to take that money. I'm going to buy something. I'm going to pay sales tax with it, and hopefully grow the economy and we get a bigger pie. Is that my understanding?
Yeah, that's correct. And not only that, you who already live in Virginia, but there are going to be people who are going to say, hey, I want to go to Virginia because I have a greater incentive to work down there because I'm going to have more money in my pocket. And so you're going to have people coming to Virginia in greater numbers than they do now. I mean, that's why these states with no state income taxes in part do so well, is because they're attracting businesses and people who want to work. Now, I'll just give you an example. Last Sunday, front page of Richmond Times-Dispatch, above the fold, was a story about Richmond City. As it turns out, Richmond City's deed-poll tax, which taxes on general revenues whether you make a profit or not,
right,
is much higher than Chesterfield, Hanover, and Henrico. And the story was about how businesses are leaving Richmond City, moving with their feet to lower nearby tax jurisdictions. So it's a perfect example at a local level of how people move because of taxes. And that the story was lamenting how many of these businesses are taking their revenue and leaving the city.
Right.
So what I'm saying is at a state level, we're in that same competition. I mean, it's March Madness, although we're in April. And what do we know of March Madness? We compete. And if you're a Virginia team, unfortunately there aren't any Virginia teams left, I mean, you compete with teams from North Carolina. Well, it's the same thing in taxes, right? We're in a competition with 50 states for the best place in the country to do business, right?
Right.
Now, this isn't lost on the governor. It's not lost on the legislature. The governor, this is another thing, the governor, we give the governor every year something like $20 million to go around and give money to businesses to try to attract them to the state. So the idea that money and incentives can pull people to the state, that's not a Vince Haley concept or a crazy right-wing concept. That is a bipartisan concept because he goes around and he tries to give money. What I'm saying is what we should do is not rely on the whatever governor we have, salesmanship and his ability to go to dinner or to lunch. You can't go to as many lunches and dinners as possible with an income tax that is lower. An income tax that is lower towards zero sends a signal to everybody on the planet, not only in the United States, everybody on the planet. Come to Virginia. It's the best place to do business. We have beautiful beaches. We have history. We have mountains. We have it all in Virginia. We're going to become a much more attractive state. Look, the governor already recognizes this, or the legislature too, because they give $20 million to the governor to try to do this. I say that's the wrong model. You want to send a message to everybody that the governor can't have dinner with? That's the way to do it. You lower income tax rates. We'll become a much more attractive place to do business.
Okay, now what about you've also advocated getting rid of the automobile car tax that everybody hates. How does that work?
Well, what I said there is we should finish the job that Governor Gilmore and his leadership started back in '97. And what he was doing on the 4 years of his governorship was he had created this vision. With the vision that I'm trying to talk about, that we should move to lowering and eventually phasing out the income tax. His vision was to eliminate the car tax. And with his leadership, we were well on our way. But we didn't have the same leadership or commitment in the Senate, and it stalled out. And it stalled out. It's roughly $950 million. It stalled out. Now, what I'm saying is, if you have a population, if you have a public committed to a certain vision, one case phasing out the income tax, if you have that same public committed to the budget restraints that would allow us to also pay down the car tax promise, we can do it. We can do it. But again, there's no magic pills here. This is a focus on the public to hold politicians accountable in Richmond to have budget restraint so that we can lower the income tax rate to zero and we can finish the job on the car tax. Now, how you do that, what's the balance of how much car tax stays out to the other, that's all a subject for negotiation. But you can do it with consistent budget restraint. Now, let me just say this. If this idea is something that I would go to the Senate and just sort of bring up in the caucus, that ain't going to work. You're not going to be able to win in the state capitol confines and meeting rooms there and try to persuade your colleagues. This has to be something that the public demands. And what I'm suggesting is that this is why I'm running on it, why I hope to get people's votes for it. It will send a big signal that we want to move in this direction. I think other candidates could pick it up. And then when the public demands this kind of outcome, we'll put the pressure on the politicians, and the politicians will have to follow.
Well, there's one thing politicians do understand, it's pressure. In reality, Vince Haley, very fascinating what you're saying, but the reality, being here in Richmond, broadcasting every day, going to the General Assembly, I mean, immediately the Democrats are going to attack this. They're going to say, look, that means nobody can get a raise. That means we have to cut all these things out. We're going to have to shut down, the welcome centers. I mean, the list is going to go on and on and on. And there's an argument that says, hey, people don't mind paying a little bit of money for government services that they want, like for instance, the welcome centers on the interstates, or people should get a 2% raise, cost of living, whatever. They're employees like everybody else. So you're going to be fighting that battle. And so it sounds good. It sounds good right now on the air, but in reality, it's going to. I mean, the chances are it'll go nowhere, right?
No. Look, the answer to those folks is to say you don't want more growth in the state. You don't want more growth, economic growth, better jobs, more opportunity. We have 800,000 people on food stamps in this state. They need jobs. We want to create a bigger economy for those folks. Look, I'm all in favor of welcome centers. I'm all in favor of welcome centers. But the history of spending in this state is we basically spend what comes in. And the goal here, and you talk about Democrats, but it's also Republicans, and I think this is unifying Republicans and Democrats. We want a bigger economy. A bigger economy is going to have more resources for all types of things. It's just a fact. And in terms of Democrats, look at the 9 states. A couple of them have Democratic governors. Nobody is moving to overturn those. And I'm sure there are some caucuses that are Democrats, okay? And that there are voters of Democrats who vote against higher taxes. And so, this idea that this is a sort of only a Republican idea or a conservative idea, 9 states already do this. They have much bigger economies. We should move in that direction. And as far as people think we're going to be cutting things, we're not cutting things. We're just controlling the rate of spending. And that's the job of what the job should be of politicians, to hold and protect the taxpayer so we can have a larger economy that will benefit everyone.
What's your stance on Obama's amnesty and immigration?
Well, the problem there, the core problem with President Obama on immigration is the rule of law, okay? I mean, think about this principle. This principle is that President Obama unilaterally can change Virginia law. I'm sure your listeners would wholeheartedly disagree with that idea, that President Obama could somehow unilaterally change Virginia law. But that's exactly what he's asserting. There's a lawsuit by 27 states that are challenging what President Obama has done unilaterally. And Virginia is absent. Virginia needs to get into that lawsuit and join and make a stand. Because what's happening, I'll give you one example, concrete example. The implications of this is that President Obama is coercing and requiring states to issue driver's licenses to people here illegally. I think, we suffered the tragedy of 9/11, and in Virginia, we know that eight of those hijackers had driver's licenses from Virginia. We reformed the driver's license to make sure that was far more secure. Other states have looked to Virginia as a model. Now the president's coming along and saying that unilaterally we have to give driver's licenses to people who've never given driver's licenses before. The Attorney General and the Governor need to be very clear about this. We are not going to comply with such an unlawful order. We know that in Texas, a judge has stopped this, and we don't know where that's going to go.
Okay, that's going to be the final word. That's going to have to be the final word. Vince, we're out of time. Vince, it's got to be the final word. We're out of time. Want more information? Go to vincehaley.com. Happy